table-making machine, and I think we should also discuss who made the machine. Are we to assume that there is a class of altruistic individual technicians that are going to work their behinds off to produce these machines to serve the greater good?
Why wouldn't there be? Because they get benefit too.
Why don't they exist right now?
Because they
have
still
to live?
They still have to have money to survive. So you're kind of trapped in this. I'm altruistic as hell, but I still have to work.
Sure.
You know, so I've still got to do what I've got to do to play the game. Even though would I much rather in the RBE, I would still do what I'm doing now. I would still be a space geek trying to build enterprises and go visit the stars. That's what I want to be when I grow up, right? So why wouldn't those people exist, knowing that there are others also building and working on systems, and everybody's mutually benefiting? That technician doesn't lose out by working their butt off because they enjoy it. First of all, they love it, and the odds are they're probably working 12 hours a day and not even realizing it, because like a programmer, I know programmers are a special breed of psycho. They will spend hours coding for 24 hours straight, not even realizing it, because they love it, and that's what they enjoy doing. Is that bad for them? No, they love it. So let them, that's what they do. And so would there be altruists? I would say yes, they exist now, but they still have to make a living in today's system. In the other system, they do it because they love it. And when you have enough automation involved, they don't need to do it as much. Right. They would do a lot of R&D. They would be developing the next breed of thing and working with teams of people. And you also got to think global, not local. With open source information, the internet, and communication, we've got teams all over the planet, peppering the planet, that are working on maybe similar projects, and they communicate and say, hey, we just figured this out over here. So this guy only needs to work 4 hours a day, but we have a 24-hour planet. So you got all these different groups working a couple of hours a day doing their thing and communicating together. That's what we'll end up developing.
Sure. Okay. I mean, it seems like there's going to be a massive transition whereby these altruistic individuals are really going to have to get their butts to work. And again, it's not just the research and developer. It seems like it would reach a point to where you could have machines that build the machines, because my next question was going to be, is it labor that extracts the trees from the forest to put them into this automated magic box that produces whatever we want?
Back to where the resources come from.
Where do the resources come from?
Yeah.
And I guess you could respond that it's going to be a machine that comes and pulls the resources out. So I guess maybe we can explore this transition phase whereby more individuals are going to start building those initial machines that are capable of building machines that would come up with this point of abundance where we can have all this leisure time because there's no longer a need. And to maybe to underline the question or the argument is there's this guy Thomas DiLorenzo who wrote a book, How Capitalism Saved America, and the initial settlers and colonists that started colonizing and populating the Northeast, they began, many of them, in a communal fashion where everybody did their part to work the land, and they all stored up the food, and then they all ate the food.
The permaculture kind of set up and whatnot?
Sure. But what slowly started to happen was people realized, I guess it's the free rider problem, people realized, oh, wow, why would I have an incentive to work hard or to be innovative or to create this wonderful machine that could benefit society when I'm going to have the same standard of living, or there's no way that I'm going to benefit myself. I'm still going to live the same as my neighbor who sits on his behind all day and just eats all the freaking food that I've been picking.
And that's people working for other people. So you run into the jealousy issues, the human emotion issues that end up coming through that kind of social contract.
An equitable input of labor.
Right, but a robot doesn't care how long it works.
I'm talking about producing the robots still at this point.
Okay, people still do that. I mean, whether they directly benefit from it or not. I doubt very seriously the guy who invented the iPhone for Apple is making billions of dollars on the invention of the Apple. Apple is, or the iPhone. Apple is, and Jobs is rolling in the dough and everything else. But I bet the engineer that went, oh wow, we could do this. He's probably still only making his $50,000 a year. And so who's getting hosed? I mean, I'm kind of throwing numbers out, but you get the idea.
Well, then I would say competition. If you're not getting paid enough with Apple, then move on down to Samsung, and maybe they'll pay $60,000. Well, then they'll come up with something to compete, an alternative, which is happening now. Apple is leading the way with their technological innovation. But again, I guess if you could explain to me, and I don't know if you guys have this thought all the way through, but I'm interested in, because the philosophy sounds wonderful. It does sound some utopian. I hate to use the word.
I hate that word.
It does sound utopian.
It is not utopian.
I know. We get the same thing with my libertarian utopia, my free society.
Because nothing's perfect. You're constantly trying to make things better, more efficient, improve. Things are going to break. Yes, that's going to happen. The challenge is using that mental brain power to fix it in a way that you're not cost restrictive. It's not like, oh, well, we can't solve that problem because it would cost $1 billion. In the resource-based economy, it's the only no is we can't solve that problem because we haven't invented a way to do it yet. And there's no monetary drawback. But you're looking at, where are you going to get the people to start this ball rolling, right? They are
the means.
Yeah, we're already out there. Me. There are others like me. There are those of us in the ZEITGEIST movement. We are the ones, the Jacques Frescos, the me's, the others like me, the yous who are not exactly on board with TVP and the RBE, I understand, but we do share a lot in common. And so your questions are perfectly viable questions that basically go down to the simple root of we still need to prove that the systems integration point works. And that's where the test city comes in and scientific method for social concern. That is the tagline that the Venus Project employs, right? What is the scientific method? Observation, hypothesis, research, experiment, secondary observation, analysis, and then retrofit if it didn't work or whatever. Well, we're only in the observation hypothesis mode right now of that process. We have all this anecdotal evidence that suggests human behavior works in this particular way based on all the scientific studies that have been done over, several decades. All the technology exists in various forms. So what we need to do is build a sample city that integrates all of that together. Does it really work? We haven't quite gotten to that point. That's why
that's the hard part.
I don't like it, and this might piss off some ZEITGEIST members, but I don't like it when they say this is how it's going to be. You don't know how it's going to be. Nobody's ever done this before. In one breath, they'll say, well, this has never been done before, so it's got to work. It's never been done before. How do you know it's going to? It's definitely going to work. Do we have a lot of anecdotal evidence and it's outside evidence to suggest that it would? Yes, the hypothesis is strong, but it's not fact. And so the notion when people are pushed back against the Venus Project, I still come down to the simple premise of we still have to go into experiment mode. Relax a little bit on some of those questions because they are unanswerable at the moment.
That's good.
And we are in awareness building mode. We just want people to understand, A, the world is broken, B, there are other options, here's what our option is, but we still need to prove ourselves. That doesn't necessarily mean that's exactly how it's going to happen. Even Jacques Fresco himself says, the cities I've drawn out are not what's going to happen in the future. He's pretty much sure that that's not how it's going to look. But it's just throwing spaghetti against the wall. Here's an idea. Take the ball and run with it. You might over time figure out, you know what, we can't put that there. We've got to put that over here because it just didn't work. That's the evolutionary, I think I made up a word. That's the evolutionary process that allows the systems, and that's why it's called an emergent system. It's constantly poking at itself, saying, can we make this better and more efficient? But this first step is to build the experiment. And that's why we want to try to garner the support to get unfortunately we work in a money system, so we're going to need money at some point to build a research city that maybe hosts 10, 15,000 people, 50,000 people, small scale size, that incorporates all of the ideas in one unit and then run it for a couple of years to see how it works. There's plenty of volunteers to make that happen. I mean, the movement is quite large. There's not that many people online constantly doing stuff, but they are there and reachable. And when we get to that point of say, hey, we're actually going to build and break ground, they're going to converge, it's going to happen, and then we can run the hypothesis.
Sure, that's good. Yeah.
And then after that, let's say it's proven and it works, well, what do you got to say now? Because once we've proven that this thing is viable and it seems to be working, there's no more argument anymore because we've proven ourselves. And if there are problems, the goal is to fix them. And if people ask additional questions, then we just keep rolling with it.
Sure.
Doug, could you speak a little bit on property rights in a resource-based economy? I know this is sometimes a concern by free market libertarians as far as property rights.
Property, you own something because you want instant access when you want it at any particular time, right? I mean, that's why you own something. It's like, why do I have a bed? Well, because I want to sleep every night on the bed, so I want to own the bed, right? Well, that's a reasonable property to own. Do you need a car? Is it necessary to have a car? Ask a lot of people who live in New York. A lot of them don't have cars. Why? Because it's a very tight city. It has a decent public transportation program. I've got friends who live in New York who haven't owned cars in 7, 8, 9 years. You know, they almost forget how to drive when they've got to go travel somewhere. Mm-hmm. They're like, just chauffeur me around. I'm not used to this driving thing. So they don't need that particular personal property. So it's not so much that, I wouldn't say we're anti-personal property, but is it, do you need it? If you have access to abundant transportation, do you need a car? Is it absolutely necessary? Can you go rent a car? Can you go check one out like you check a book out of the library? You say, you know what, I'm going into the woods with the family, and I want to, you know, be able, you don't have a train or anything that goes there, so I'm going to go check out a car, we're going to load up the family, and we're going to go. So you still have instances, like Enterprise drops you off or picks you up or whatever, right? So you still have that kind of access when you want it. So do you need to own that? Not really. But you do need to own your clothes. You're not going to timeshare clothing. You're not going to timeshare food. You're not going to timeshare. There are some basic necessities that make sense to quote unquote own, right? But I guess to what level do you place the importance and the need of ownership and having private property? If you're living in a system where you can live in Berlin for 3 or 4 years in a house and be like, you know what, I'm kind of bored here. I'm gonna go live down in Australia for a little while. In the RBE, you hop and you go. There's no financial ramification to that kind of moving. Do you need to own a home at that point anymore? If you have that kind of freedom to travel and move and live wherever you want, whenever you want. And you're not really hurting the system in the fact that, well, now your labor doesn't, what you were doing for work there, there's no reason with communication that we have today that you can't telecommute and work anywhere on the planet. In fact, we do that a lot nowadays. We do that a lot in the space program. Look at NASA. You got JSC, you've got KSC, you've got Palmdale and Ames Research Center, all these NASA facilities. We have meetings all the time on WebEx, which are interactive telephone teleconferencing, and you can do the video Skype and all that. So a lot of the work that you would do can still be done telecommute-wise, so it's irrelevant where you live. You can live on the moon as far as I'm concerned. It really doesn't matter.
Climates are different.
Slightly.
Well, not the moon. I'm talking about across the world, like living next to the equator. I like to live in Texas. I would prefer to live in Texas, and it'd be great to be able to control my property, which is how I define property rights, is who controls it. And so it sounds like, and this brings to my third criticism, and by the way, what you're saying earlier about actually creating the experimental city, I think that's when movements become truly revolutionary or evolutionary, because they bring the theoretical into practical life.
Yeah, to practical, absolutely.
Yeah. That's also when you got to watch out for the man.
Yeah, well, I'm
keeping an eye out on people.
The engineer in me still wants to see the model.
That's right, for sure. Yeah, and I would love to see a totally free society without state monopoly violence or police. But the third criticism would be, and it goes back to property and control of resources. I believe it's individuals that should control resources, and individuals can relinquish control of certain resources in order to benefit themselves or in order for a mutually beneficial voluntary community or association or contract. But it seems like in this system, especially in the steps to creating this system, in the means and the pathway towards the end, but also during the end, for example, somebody's going to have to write an algorithm to be able to create the most efficient and effective output from the people's input that they put in the hypothetical system we spoke of, where they talk about how many rations they like. And I'm going to use the term rations because it seems like they would deliver you your weekly rations, but it would be determined by you.
No, you could just go get it at the distribution center.
Okay, sure. Okay. So who is it that writes this particular algorithm, and how can we ensure that, and again in the transition especially, it seems like there will be leadership or some sort of people paving the way and helping to build these institutions, and I know the movement's mainly anti-institution, but let's face it, the production system would be an institution in and of itself. Who's going to be the ones, the technicians that are writing the algorithms and the programs and tweaking things in order to make sure that it benefits everybody, and how can we, the individuals who have had a history generation after generation, civilization after civilization of individuals coming together, the small minority, using institutions, be it religion or the state, as you guys espouse, or even this particular institution which we see building up. How are we to ensure at the individual level that we're not going to get faced with the same oligarchic group that now begins to manipulate the algorithms, and it's no longer in the best interest of the individuals, rather it's in the best interest of the small group?
Yeah.